I'm Jenny Vyas, and you're watching Anokhi Uncensored.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of Anokhi Uncensored. I'm your host this week, Raj Girn, the founder of the umbrella brand Anokhi Life. Today's show is themed, Is Art an Expression of Identity? And my featured guest is self-taught contemporary fine artist and muralist from the Chicagoland area, Jenny Vyas. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show, sweetheart. I'm so excited to share your inspiring story with everyone. And I'm so excited to kind of delve into just, how you got to where you did, because it's been quite the journey. So thank you for agreeing to spend this hour with us here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. It's been a while since I've done one of these lives, and I've been following your show. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm so happy as well. So are we good with tech? Brilliant. Perfect. So we are good with tech. I'm going to move straight in. Before we get into our conversation, folks, I want to give you guys a little bit of background on Jenny for any of you guys that may not be, fully familiar with her. So here goes. Jenny is highly influenced by beauty in complex human emotions and attempts to reveal them through multiple nuances and expressions through her work. Her interest in human frailty shows in her paintings, where she creates abstracts of human silhouettes and fluctuation forms in half light, all drawn from reality, personal experiences, and memories. Some of her popular murals are the Wings in West Loop at Federales, is that correct? Federales,
Correct.
Chicago?
Yep.
Painted in collaboration with Chicago artist Cesar Perez, that went viral with the hashtag FederalesChai. The hashtag Be the Bridge mural supported the Black Lives Matter movement for Soul City Church in West Loop. The hashtag How Will You Rise mural at the Clifton Street Art Gallery on Broadway in Clifton in Uptown Chicago, and her Indian murals at the Rue Indian restaurants in Chicago and Columbus, Ohio, and the Kaladi South Indian Gastropub in East Village, Manhattan in New York. And if you haven't checked out any of Jenny's art before, go check out her Instagram at Jenny Vyas. That's Vyas. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We've had a chance now to populate some people in, so we're going to get right into the questioning. Jenny, here's where I want to start. I want to start at the beginning of your journey with art. I read on your website that your art journey was born at a time when you were going through some challenges. It was a dark time, as it stated on your website. And you kind of formed this serendipitous relationship with art to heal yourself and also to heal others. Can you tell me a little bit about what that darkness was? Are you comfortable going back there?
Oh yeah, I'm very open about it. I went through, like all great stories start in life. Mine started with heartbreak from a broken relationship.
Okay.
I was engaged to be married. We were a week away from signing the paperwork for our wedding venue, and we went to court to get our domestic license, because I had just quit my corporate job and I was going independent, and someone suggested, hey, you guys can get a domestic license since you're going to get married anyway in 6 months.
Right.
You can get on his health insurance. And I think that became very real for him. And he had not once told me in 2.5 years that he had doubts about this relationship. And for me, that was such a shock to my system that I failed so drastically in understanding someone's pain and someone's doubts about a relationship. Because when the doubts arise, it's usually not about you, right? Like, yes,
right.
you are contributing to the pain, but to not even discern those doubts, I think that was my greatest learning. So I took the next 6 months in really healing from this journey. There was a pattern that had repeated in my relationships. I was dating emotionally unavailable men.
Okay.
And so I really dove deep into it. I went through deep therapy, and that period lasted for about 6 months. And during that period of darkness, I just couldn't stop thinking about painting. And I'd never painted before. So for me, that was huge. It was terrifying to think about doing something. And it's not, it's almost like it's a gift that you have to explore. And I didn't know if I even had it.
Right.
But something told me I had to do it. So
Yeah.
that's really where my journey started. Yeah.
But,
And I
I
decided
find,
to do it. And I'd say first 6 months were brutal. They were absolutely brutal because I hated everything I created. And then, yeah, it kind of came together.
so I want to ask you, like, what was it about the expression of the art? And I read this on your website as well, which you call your heart work. What was it
Yes.
about that helped the healing process for you? Like, what was it specifically? Can you kind of pinpoint it?
Yeah. So I think my greatest learning from my breakup, and while I dove into like the history of what had brought me to that moment, that catalyst, right? Like that breakup was the catalyst in understanding who I was.
Right.
The greatest learning was that I did not know how to manage emotional risk. I wasn't allowing myself to be vulnerable in any relationship, not even with my parents, not with my sibling, not with my friendships.
Yeah.
And that was a huge learning, right? Like, and it was a shock to really understand that that was the leading factor in where I failed in life and why I was not confident enough to like pursue a career like art. And that was it. That was my greatest learning. And I decided to unpack that in my paintings to really dive deep into vulnerability. And so my first project that I painted was called 100 Vulnerable Days. And I unpacked vulnerability on a very, very personal level. And I decided to make myself the audience for that project. And people just started connecting with it because I was talking about very deep stuff.
Right.
And for me, that was just a means to catharsis for myself. But it became an extension of other people's stories. And that, I think, that was a gift I didn't anticipate. So I think it's just been a wonderful, like multifold, giving and receiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because, when we, give to ourselves, somehow, people, around the world, become attracted if they resonate to that same message. And I'm kind of hearing that's what happened here with you. I want to kind of, maybe go a little deeper in this because I also saw that you had this really interesting quote by Khalil Gibran on your website. I'm going to quote it for those people who haven't been on your website. So basically what it says is, it comes through you, but not from you. And though it is with you, it belongs not to you. What does this mean to you?
So the quote is from The Prophet, which is literally one of my favorite books ever written.
Yes,
and,
I have it too.
Right? And so in that chapter, when people are asking him to give him final pieces of advice, this particular quote comes from his advice about children and telling parents that they really don't belong to you. They come through you. And so for me, that kind of became this like conduit for the gift. I became this conduit for the gift that was coming through me, because some of the works that I create, I have no idea that I could create work like this. That was so deeply meaningful, full, and so philosophical. So for me, it just became sort of a divine gift. And that's how I do a little prayer when I start painting. I'm spiritual. I'm not so much religious, but I am spiritual. And so for me, this was just, that quote is all about that this gift really doesn't belong to me. And I'm here to deliver whatever the messages that come through my art. And to hold on to that, I think is a disservice to the universe.
Right. That's really, I love your perspective on this. And it kind of takes me to the next question I want to ask you. You refer to cognitive ecstasy. And I love that, you quote that as well. And it's something that you state is something that Shakespeare talks about. Can you talk about the significance of that to you and to your life at this point when all of this was going on and you were learning more about yourself?
I think there's this incredible innate joy that comes from doing something 100% with your body and mind. There is a word called enso in Japanese meditation practice, right? Like when you create a circle with one stroke or two strokes max. And the point of that exercise is that you literally let go of your entire body and your mind, and you empty it out, and you just literally create. And for me, cognitive ecstasy is that moment when I'm painting for hours at a time, sometimes in complete silence. I emerge from it. It's almost like a flow state mind where everything, becomes one. And that kind of ecstasy I had never experienced before. And to be able to tap into that again and again and again. I'm blown away because people always talk about the flow state to pursue it and to hunt it down and kind of find it again. For me, I'm able to tap into that again and again. And it's just, I am incredibly grateful that I found this means. Like, to me, art is just a means to get to that space.
Oh my
because
God,
I can't really
wonderful.
meditate. So for me, this is the closest to meditation I get.
So this is your form of meditation. It's about getting to a state where you are one with yourself and with the universe as you understand it in that present moment, right?
Yes.
And the flow that comes from that is what is your art. Really.
Right. And it's like, and it's also a very philosophical and intelligent process for me, because I do unpack stories. I'm a storyteller by heart, and to be able to translate that in a very singular emotion, because I do get caught up in this singular emotion that I want to translate, and to be able to do that, there's this cognitive, like engagement that needs to happen, and that ecstasy that comes from that piece when I'm done and I know that I've captured what I was aiming for. I think it's just, and sometimes I don't even know I'm going for that, by the way. Sometimes you just start like creating and I'm like, wow, that is pretty powerful. And
so let's talk about this, Jenny. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your process. Sure. So talk us through it.
So it's multifold. Some of the pieces start with the vision of a concept in mind. So I have this like image that I want to create, like the piece that I'm working on right now, which I should be working on my show, but I just decided to work on something else instead. I was inspired by Diwali. I haven't painted that many Indian works. I've done murals, but nothing from the studio as much. And so I decided I wanted to create this I like powerful women, because that's how I see myself. That's how I see women in general. My mother is incredibly powerful. I grew up in a family, even in India, who were very, very, they all worked. They all got married later in life. My grandmother, she raised 9 children. My grandfather was a freedom fighter. So I just come from a very strong set of role models in life. And so for me to create these women is really it's just natural for me. I cannot create women who are not powerful, but then also I like to add this dichotomy of this feminism, this delicacy, this tenderness in it, because that's something I'm personally exploring for myself from my comment about vulnerability, which is my kryptonite, which I think it's everyone's kryptonite, right?
Of course. Well, how do we grow? How do we grow if we don't stretch? And how do we stretch if we don't feel different types of emotions, especially those that challenges the greatest, right? I mean, those who have accomplished greatness in their life have gone through a lot of stretching and growth in the process. So this is what you've decided to do with your life is to take on that stretch, that growth.
Yes, it's that I always talk about this liminal space in between, the polarity between darkness and light. It's that in between space. Yes. Because when we're going through growth, when we're growing, we really aren't capable of capturing that in a snapshot. We're not sitting here videotaping ourselves, right? So how do I capture that? That became kind of a passion of mine, and almost like an obsession. And I don't think that'll change for a very long time, at least right now. Because it makes me so happy when I'm able to unpack that in multiple levels. The story that I'm trying to capture. So it could be the topics that I've explored, for example, like how do you come undone? That's my next show. Like really when you let go and when you are starting to open your heart up, what does that feel like? And so this show is about just really everything in the show is about this powerful opening. And that's a very singular concept. And that's really how my process starts. I try to, because if I tried to create so much of what I'm thinking, it would be impossible. So I try to narrow it down, and it could be as singular as this expression in the eyes that I want to capture. And eyes are very important in my work, as you know. And I just get fixated on it. I just unless I'm happy with it, I will work on those eyes for hours or days. Wow. And that's really how my process starts. A lot of the influence comes from books or stories I've read. My dad is a philosopher, so we've been talking our whole life about, origin of life and just meaning of life. And so a lot of that kind of bleeds into my work. very naturally.
Is this the reason why, you know, a lot of the influences you have are so diverse? I mean, you know, reading about you, I saw that, you know, everything from, you know, Shakespeare to Warhol and everyone in between. By the way, I see influences of Warhol in your works as well.
Yes.
And, you know, artists like Dali, you know, Dali to Klimt.
Dalai Lama.
Salvador Dali. It's just incredible how diverse your influences are. I kind of want to understand, with having such a diverse palette and coming from kind of, you know, the background that you just talked about, where you got, you know, where clearly you were encouraged to have a mind, to think, to explore.
Sure. Yes.
How do you take all of that, the bigness of it, and create that singular polarity that you're talking about? Like, how do you, as Jenny, do that?
And that's a great question. I honestly, one of the things that I started doing before I started writing is the quotes or parts of a story that I fell in love with, the pieces of writing, because I think it's so incredibly beautiful to me when someone can put a sentence, a really beautifully crafted sentence together.
Yes,
I started saving those in like Evernote when Evernote was big. And I just didn't know what I was going to do with it. And when I started painting, I would kind of fuse those in, and it was just such a beautiful marriage of like my right brain and my left brain coming together, because I am very I don't know how much you believe in zodiac signs.
I do, very much so.
I'm a Scorpio sun and rising, and I'm a Aquarius moon, so it's a very
that's interesting.
It's very interesting, and I understand myself finally. I'm like, okay, why? Like, I'm always in this space of like fantasy and very pragmatic conversations, right? Yes. And I'm a very statistically driven person. So for me to be able to bring the two together, art was just my savior from that standpoint, because it was so much chaos otherwise. And so art actually allows me to really distill it down to just very singular conversations that I want to have. Because if I was going to try to have every conversation that's in my head, it would be impossible, right?
Right. So this is a great way for you to discipline what you need to be thinking about in a given moment, right?
Right. And like really just kind of focusing on, I think this is something that I can advise artists or creators in general. Having that brand identity as for yourself is so necessary, and not just so that your business is successful as a business, but also it keeps you focused and gives you that space for catharsis, because we're all creating to heal some wounds or some other people's wounds or connect with others. Find that story that you want to tell and stick with it, because it's so incredibly important and necessary when you're able to do that. And so for me, whenever I get too like lost or dispersed in my thoughts, I'm always able to narrow it down and talk about this one area, this like area of growth that I always want to talk about. Does it talk about this like stark, you know, difference between darkness and light? Like, does it really capture that moment? Like Louis Aragon's quote, right? Like, you know, truth presupposes error. And we need to, in order to understand darkness, we have to understand light.
100%.
In order to understand light, we have to know that there, you know, without night, they would never come. We would not even know what day is if there was no night.
Well, so, I mean, without polarity, there is no understanding of what we, you know, determine as an individual person, what we consider to be right or wrong. Because that's all a perspective too, right? It's a perspective. Like everyone has a perspective on what they believe to be right and wrong, but it has to come from understanding what we don't believe in order to understand what we do believe in. So I get where you're coming from with that. I'm a huge proponent of understanding polarities to get who you are as an individual and to understand why people make the decisions that they do. And I feel it kind of takes away a little bit from, you know, this kind of perceived idea that everybody needs to get you, because they have their own journey that they're on, right? And understanding that polarity exists helps us maybe deal with the fact that not everyone that we meet or not everyone that we love is going to have the same perspective on any given thing that we have. You know, I kind of feel that that's, I feel that that's kind of some of what's been going on as well with what you were talking about. And I gotta ask you about your art. I mean, it's so bold and monochromatic and big canvases, yet so delicate, you know, on the other side of it. It's just such an interesting marriage between two opposites in what I see when I see your art.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because that's really what I'm aiming for.
Really? Okay, can we talk about that? Can we talk about why you work in big, bold canvases, why you work with monochromatic exploration, and why there is this kind of interesting play with light? Let's talk about some of this.
So the project, the vulnerability project, really, I wanted to focus on such singular emotions. And in order to focus on those, I wanted to take away all noise that included color.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started playing with black and white, that emotion that came from that was just so powerful.
Right.
And it just, because I had played with multiple styles. I played with color, I played with watercolors, I played with so many different things. And that's what I encourage artists to do. Play with multiple mediums, sketch, draw, find that, like, there's this like moment when you just know you've hit it. This is my thing. Like, you just know. And that was my moment when I found the monochromatic story, like monochromatic style. I just knew it. And I remember going to my brother and saying, I think I found it. I'm like, I think I can do this.
Gosh. What a moment.
And I've cried so much over the course of and I've only painted for 5 years, so this is all still new to me. And just there are times when I will execute something and I just cry because I didn't even think it was going to be that powerful.
Wow.
So for me, that's really important. And this style, and yes, I have a very, very, very varied interest when it comes to reading. And I've read all artists, like multiple different artists' books. I've even read Ai Weiwei, who's so political in his work. And I've read what inspires artists. And all of them, for the most part, every true artist will share that there's this like concentration of story. There's this area of concentration when they unfold any stories. And it's very necessary, because if you can't connect with that story, I don't think your work is going to be as powerful as you want it to be. Because like, I just don't think everyone can paint everything. And there are artists who can do that very successfully. There are artists who just will create ghost murals, who will create anything, any picture that you give them. That's a whole different set of skills, right?
Right.
But that's their profession. For me, this was not so much about creating work to sell. This was very much about telling stories and healing myself and healing people who saw the stories in there and created. So it's not so much it's those messages that I get that, hey, your piece really spoke to me. Like, I'm going through something really rough in life right now. And like, your story really, like, I can connect with it. Those are the moments why I paint. And it's really wonderful. I mean, selling is, of course, a beautiful byproduct.
Of course. And it's very interesting because, you know, the question does become, at what point did the art become a business for you? Like, when did you realize that, you know, hang on a minute. Okay, I've been on this journey of exploration for self, right? I'm noticing people are resonating with the healing process.
Yes.
Of what, you know, what's coming out of what I'm putting out there. At what point did you say, you know what, this is actually what I want to do from a business standpoint as well? Take us there, because, you know, oftentimes there's a lot of artists out there, right, sweetheart? There's a lot of artists, and it's a bold acknowledgement when you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to, you know, create a lifestyle for myself. Like, when did that happen for you? And, you know, what was that like? Like, describe that dynamic for us, for any budding artists out there that's kind of sitting on the fence of this. Yeah.
So I will say art is not how I thought I would start. I knew before I became an artist that I wanted to be a thought leader in some space. I wanted to share my learnings, because everybody has some level of wisdom to share.
Of course.
And I wanted to share those stories, things I've learned from my failures, my successes, my ability to bounce back from taking risks, and including risks with my heart. I knew that I wanted to be that thought leader. I just didn't know what the medium was going to be. And so for me, the art came afterwards, because I had already started talking about, like, I have a little bit of a writer in me, I feel like. So I write sometimes. And that was really how I thought I would really create my story. The art just kind of fell into place one day. And that's why I say, like, this is a gift that I didn't even know I had, which is why I feel like it doesn't belong to me. I think it's just like, it found me because
Mm-hmm.
these stories needed to come out and they
Mm-hmm.
needed to be delivered. So I never look at this gift as my own.
Right.
I think I'm really a conduit for that.
Is
But
that why you kind of resonated to Khalil Gibran as well? Because you know how it was like later in years that he
yes,
discovered, the magic
yes.
of his unique, value
There's
proposition.
so many writers. Like, and I'm 40.
Mm,
I just turned 45 last week, right? And
mhm,
for me, like starting to think about switching careers at 38 and not even knowing what that was going to be like,
mhm,
my
mhm,
relationship had just fallen apart. And I
mhm,
was so unhappy, but I knew something was waiting for me. And to really sit in that space and really like complete utter discomfort of
mhm.
knowing that, you know what, everything's going to change. The paradigm of the universe, as you know, is about to change. And it's
Right.
okay. You're going to go through it. One of the things I did back then is move back with my parents because I was living with my ex. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me was such a lifesaver because my
Yeah.
parents and I are very close. And to be able to heal together as a family,
Mm-hmm.
as a unit, is what allowed me to like emotionally start taking this risk.
Right.
The
And
business
just
side of
also giving them the opportunity, Jenny. Like,
yes,
you just said something I feel is really poignant that people need to hear. And that is that, realizing that the pain that you're going through, that clearly the pain is something that is residual in its effect because it's also affecting the people you love, and giving them the opportunity to understand that
yeah,
and participate in the healing process with you and also for
yes,
themselves, especially if they're your family, is so important. And that's the thing, like, we run away when we feel
mm-hmm.
vulnerable. Oftentimes it's kind of human nature to kind of go in the other direction and create a hole for ourselves and sit in there for a bit. But the fact that you actually went home and allowed them to participate in this, I feel took a lot of courage. And I feel that it's something that people need to do more of, is to really hone in on the power and strength of the people that love you, and give them the opportunity to understand that something is going on here, and they
Yes.
also need an explanation for that. Like, and I feel that you kind of
Yeah.
went on that journey.
Oh, 100%. I think like, I truly think you have to teach people how to love you.
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes,
think,
yes. Yes,
it's,
girlfriend.
like, I feel like right? Like how wonderful would it be if you could go to a relationship and say, hey, look, these are my childhood wounds. Like reality is where your parents leave off when you grow up, your spouse
Mm-hmm.
picks up because you really are expecting your spouse to heal all the wounds that your parents inflicted
Mm-hmm.
upon you to teach you how to survive in the real world, which they
Mm-hmm.
have to often, right? And if you aren't aware of those childhood wounds, because I have some deep wounds from my childhood, and to expect your partner to just understand those wounds and just know them, I think that's the myth that Hollywood has created, Bollywood has created. Like
Yes.
I don't believe in soulmates. Like I don't believe that
Mm-hmm.
someone like was pre-made for you, like the word
And they
nasiib,
just
which is
get
like
you, and they haven't been a
pre
part of your life. Meanwhile, they're supposed to get you. Like, how is that even
no,
possible?
no, like every decade I feel like you turn into a new person because of the
Yeah.
learnings that you unpack, right? And so every decade, the new birthday, we are all sitting there going, wow, things have changed.
Yes.
How can you expect your partner to really understand you? So for me, that has kind of become a passion of mine, that through this story, hopefully I can, when I have my next serious relationship, I can share, hey, here are my wounds. This has nothing to do with you. For
Right.
today, I might need to be alone. Leave me alone. Let me figure this out. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I need to be loved in a certain way, because
Mm-hmm.
that's my wound, I am able to go convey that, hey, including my girlfriends, I can say, hey, I am having a hard day. I
Yep.
need you to talk to me and I need you to just listen to me.
Right.
And I think that's such a tough thing to do, to really help people understand how to love you. And I think the minute you can do that, I think it's such a gift you can give people in your life, because it's
Absolutely.
exhausting. It's exhausting to try to take the burden of godhood, because essentially that's what we're doing, right? Like to others,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you are going to just understand everything about me, and that's difficult.
Yeah,
And
it's not,
that's
it's
what
not
I
even
think.
realistic. And it's the reason
No,
why we go through so many relationship traumas, is we have just this
100%.
thing called expectation. I mean, like,
Yes.
this thing that we do to ourselves and we do to other people, that we need to stop doing as a human race. We create
Yes.
so much trauma and residual trauma and perpetual trauma and amplified trauma, because we just think that people need to just get stuff without us participating in the process of allowing them to understand what's happening with us, right?
Yes,
and this is
yes,
what you're saying.
100%. And I've like, my parents, my brother and I are very different people. He can compartmentalize emotions very well. Men can in general do that, which is their gift. Whereas we can tap into emotions a lot quicker than they can, right? Like if you understand those differences, I think it can be a really good partnership, including with your brothers, your father. But my parents have a very hard time, like grasping that I'm a very emotionally charged person.
Yeah.
Whereas my brother can very much at all times be in control of his emotions and kind of compartmentalize so well during a conversation that nothing becomes personal to him. And I'm learning to like manage my emotions a little bit better, but there are times when I just can't, and I have to tell my parents, this is who I am.
Yeah.
You need to understand that I'm not him, this is me.
Yeah.
And to teach them how to love me and know that, you know what, that doesn't mean that they're going to hate you. They might not like you for a minute, but that's okay. Because guess what? Next day, they're going to look at you and say, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
We need to know how to love you.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, do they not understand, Jenny, that you are a double Scorpio, for heaven's sakes? That's like double whammy, nth degree of emotion right there. And then on the other side,
when I read that, recently found out, I'm like, oh my God, it makes sense.
Absolutely. And then the interesting thing about, you know, your horoscopes is that, you know, you've got this double Scorpio situation going on, which is very deep and very intense. And I get why your art is what it is, which is just magnificent on so many like layers.
Thank you. Thank you.
But then this Aquarian side of you that is like back the off,
Yes.
right? So that juxtaposition can be hard for parents to understand.
Yes. I am, when I'm emotionally charged, I don't like being close to people. I just need to process it, you know, very well. But I think my parents do a wonderful job. I think like, of course they've raised me my whole life, but like, I think they do. I'm not easy to understand. And for them, it's a wonderful thing that in the last 5 years, I've been able to really, really explain, hey, these are the areas I really, really need you guys to show up in. And
I love that.
I think it's a constant like journey to teach people, because you grow. And if you don't share your growth with others, and if you cannot vocalize that, I just don't know how people can proceed. Like, people aren't mind readers. It's just that idea needs to go out of people's heads. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Absolutely agreed.
Kudos to people who can really connect that way, where the husband and wife are just sitting there, like they just know each other's thoughts and they're so beautifully connected. Hey, kudos to you guys. I don't think I'm able to do that, mainly because I'm not even sending that energy and those vibes out. Like I am.
And you change daily. You're an artist, sweetheart. You change daily. How is it possible that someone will always know what's going on with you unless you communicate it, right?
Right. And I think that's my greatest learning from these 5 years. This art has allowed me to understand that sharing your growth, sharing your emotions, sharing your thoughts, it's okay. And it's okay to disappoint people. That I've always known, but I'm very comfortable with the idea that it's okay to disappoint people, because you're not here to please everybody.
Right. You're here for you, sweetheart. You're on your journey.
There are going to be people who are not going to love you. Unconditional love really is genetically, it's your sibling and your parents, period. Everybody else, you really have to cultivate love.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's talk a little bit about the depth of this art that you do, girlfriend. Oh my God. It's like, I find that I keep looking at it. Like I keep looking at it. There's so much depth in it, and just your use of light with the monochromatic is just genius. It's like when I see your art, I know it's you. Like you have definitely, I don't know if you did this on purpose or if it was just a part of the flow of your journey, but your brand is very distinctive, and not many artists can say that. Few and far between, right?
Thank you.
Do people say that to you? Like, you know,
yes, and I'm very,
some feedback.
It's very intentional. So when people approach me for certain, you know, murals, even, one of the rules that I have is there are certain areas I will not paint. I don't paint things about religion, politics, and personal portraits of people.
Okay.
Because then everyone gets caught up in like their facial structures and
Right.
stuff. It really takes away from the joy of it.
Yeah.
So for me, there's a reason why you gravitate towards my work. It's because I start with the emotion. I don't really start with the person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look for photos, or I concept something and then I sketch it out based on that emotion.
Right.
So it's a very different process. And for someone to contact me and say, hey, can you do a portrait of my wife? I would have to do a whole photo shoot with them. And I don't even know if that's possible, right? Because not everyone is able to physically, create that energy.
So can I say something to you?
Yeah.
I'm listening to you here. Here's how I feel about what you just said. I have to share it because it's coming
Sure.
out. It's dying to speak to you. There are people that create things that are identical. There's that artist, right?
Sure.
This is the person, and I create them and they look identical to it.
Right.
That's a type of artist. Then there's artists that create impressions, expressions, sure. Perspectives, yep. Abstract, right. Ways to communicate how that person is to them, what their energy is. So they create energy as opposed to a mirror image.
Right.
You, girlfriend, are the exact place where you need to be. What you're able to do, and that is not replicate the mirror, but to delve deep into the energy and the perspective and the feeling and the emotion that you're getting out of whatever it is that you're creating in art. That, sweetheart, that is the magic. That's the manna from heaven. That's the utopia. That's the nirvana. And you have that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, realism. So what you're talking about is realism, and realism
yes.
is there are artists who can do that, and I'm blown away by their work.
Yeah.
It's not the way I wanted to tell my story, right? Like I just knew that this monochromatic style and this and of course it's also about identity. I wanted my work to stand out, and if I don't add the monochromatic, like even with my colored work, there is like an element of monochromatic, chromatic like elements in there, right?
Yes.
And that's very important to me, and that's
similar to what you've got behind you, like what you got behind you.
Yeah.
I mean, the colors pop, but it's very
right.
indicative and betrays the style of your art still.
Right. Exactly. And so when clients connect with me and they tell me they want me to recreate something or some kind of an image, I'm very, very clear that this monochromatic style will not, that is like a necessary element.
Mm-hmm.
And people have walked away and not, or I have walked away when I haven't worked from that. Right. And that's okay. It's okay. I mean, I say no more than I say yes. And that's so necessary for a brand, so necessary for your integrity as an artist, as a creator. Yeah. Because the minute you start compromising on those areas, I think it's where the pain kicks in, and like I think the joy of pursuing this as a passion kind of takes away. I started doing this because I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because I
was doing that at a corporate job. I was doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, you did that for 15 years. I read about it. That was a different version of you. So it's interesting because this kind of leads us into the part of the conversation that I'd like to go to next. And that's kind of the whole idea about art as an expression of identity. So Jenny, I'm a firm believer that all forms of art are an expression of identity. I believe that having delved into your art in this conversation that we've had so far, and you being so kind of open and expressive about what that means to you, I feel like you have given us a look into your psyche, and it's been very explorative, like very interesting. And everything you say begs me to ask you another question, but since we've only got an hour, I'm going to take you in a certain direction now. And that is, what are you looking for? Or perhaps what have you found that you want others to see in your work?
No one's ever asked me that. My goal in the end, and I guess I've thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all here looking for, a way to leave a legacy behind. Mm-hmm. We all wonder what my story will, we don't have graves as a Hindu. I'll get cremated, but like, what will my legacy be when I'm gone? How will people talk about my art at the end of the day? And I think what I would love for people to understand, and what I'm attempting to capture, is really the journey to healing and journey to joy and happiness is through it's through the pain. I mean, there's no way around it. And really embracing pain as part of our life, I think, is so necessary. And until I was able to do that wholeheartedly, I don't think I found true happiness. And really, I want to capture that as I get, as I age, because the whole Buddhism, I love Buddhism, and like
too.
pain, suffering is part of our life, and really being able to look at suffering from a place of beauty. I think that's necessary for me to be able to know that when I leave this world, hopefully I can leave some avenue, some channels for people to heal their wounds.
Amen,
and I think
sister.
people just want their stories to be told, and like I feel like a lot of the stories that I tell in my work aren't mine. I think I'm just sharing other people's stories.
That's interesting because there's a huge focus on, I mean, your art is very female centric, right? So
right.
let's go there. I got to go there now, right? So
sure.
I mean, you've talked about the fact that your art is very cathartic, very therapeutic for you and for other people who have communicated with you. It's an expression of personal identity. Is it more than that?
Yes, 100%. I feel like the female form is just natural for me, being a female, so I can connect with it very easily. I also feel like female form in the way I am painting hasn't been painted over the course of history. And for me, it became kind of a personal mission to commemorate the female body, female emotions, female strength in such a way that and I know this is our era, right? Like this is what a lot of artists are doing today. But for me, when I look back at art from back in the days, I just don't see strong females represented in paintings. And that became very important to me. And it's not so much about feminism. It's really about, capturing this moment in history that we are in this era where females are finding their place in life. I grew up in a very, very broad-minded family. So for me, it was not a question to really even think about, am I going to work? I could do whatever I wanted, right?
Right.
To be able to take
and that's rare.
Right. That's very rare, even in general, but it's even more rare in an Indian culture. And so for me, the identity that was tied to this whole like norm of marriage and having children and having this family and like this rat race, I was never attracted to that to begin with. And as I got older, that was my melancholy. And I really wanted to kind of break that. And I really wanted to find a place of joy from this melancholy, because I feel like we're all, there's a melancholy in all of our lives, and that's okay. And understanding that melancholy is a beautiful thing, that was necessary for me. So yeah, that's kind of become the identity of my work. I do paint men once in a while, and I feel like the next body of work, if I create in any other gender form per se, will be more androgynous, if anything, than men.
Oh my God, that's so interesting.
Right. So I'm very attracted to the whole androgynous body form.
Yes.
And to like the whole taking any kind of gender away and really getting into that place of spirituality, not so much from a religious spirituality, but from a creative spirituality. And so we'll see where that takes me. But
oh my God, that's just so, I can't wait for that. But I want people to be kind of really clear on a couple of things about who you are from an identity perspective as a woman. As a woman of color, what do these identities mean to you on a personal level, especially in today's climate? It's almost like you are doing what you're doing at a time when it's needed. Talk to me.
Sure. And it's so interesting because I feel like I kind of took a turn in life, in the universe, and ended up here. I feel like it's just very coincidental for me, although I don't believe in coincidences. And which is why I think like there's a huge awareness that I need to shift gears and really do something with this platform that I'm building. And so I'm getting into public art work moving forward, which will hopefully leave a little larger impact out there. And really, for me, I'm a numbers person, so I want to actually blend statistics and art together, which hasn't been done very successfully.
That's interesting.
That's my big dream in the next 5 years. Right? In the next 5 years, I want to bring some social work projects to life through art, that, and indisputable numbers that, you know, like one of my favorite books that I recently read is Factfulness, and that talks about 10 or 9 indisputable numbers over the course of last 50 years, how we are living currently in the best of times. And people just like, you know, it's like happiness is relative, and we just don't even know how bad it used to be, right? Like why our parents had 9 children, 6 children.
100%.
Like there was a reason why, because half of them, the potential was they would die.
Yeah.
And so I think for us for me, that's very, very necessary. And it's so like, I gravitate towards it. So that's where I'm heading as an artist. Today, as a colored woman, I think it's interesting. I don't connect with that as much as I connect with the womanhood, because in India, it's such a tough thing. And even it's a very male-driven society. Even in my family, as open as that culture is, it is, you know, it's a male-dominated society. And for me, that's something inside of me just shifts, and I get into this place of anger. I think it's collective residual anger from like generations down.
Yeah, generational trauma. Yeah,
generational trauma that I feel like I am here to tell those stories, and I love, which is why I think it's so beautiful to me when I'm able to paint these strong Indian women, strong progressive Indian women that embrace both sides in Western and Eastern cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, looking back at your life, if there's anything that you could change, what would it be and why change it?
I mean, I feel like I believe in the whole butterfly effect. You change one thing, everything shifts, and I wouldn't have ended up here.
I do too.
I do believe that life, you know, all the dots connect backwards, like Steve Jobs said. Everything in life is meant to bring you where you end up. If I was to change something, I think my relationship with my father has been very, it wasn't like we didn't live together, all of it. It was there. My parents are happily married. It's just, I'm a very strong personality, and so is he, and we clash. And I wish I didn't grow up with him, because we are farmers by trade in India. And so he lived in the village. I lived in the city for education. I saw him once a month. That's the only thing I would change. I wish I had lived with him, because I think I would have become who I am today is what I would have become a lot earlier. And I think our wounds wouldn't be as deep as they are right now, because I have hurt him. He has hurt me.
I understand. As we do. It's that polarity we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation, right? Yeah.
And he's the one that I fight. I will fight with him to help him understand me, because he's the most important person in my life.
Amen. I hear you, girl. So I have to ask you this question then, based off of what you just said. To that girl who went through the dark period, at her most bleak moment, what would you say to her as the woman you are today?
Reach out for help. Like, ask for help. I never asked for help until I really fell apart. And my studio is in my parents' basement, and where I sit right now, right across from that, I remember that moment when I completely fell apart. I was hugging the carpet because I just needed to be hugged.
Yes.
And the carpet felt soothing. And that moment, I will never forget. And I remember that moment because I told myself that day that this doesn't need to happen. You shouldn't have to. It's okay to fall apart. I do believe that we need to come completely undone sometimes.
Yeah.
But ask for help. Had I asked for help in different parts of my life, I think I would have been so much I think it would have been a little bit easier.
I completely agree with you.
You know, like I would have been kinder to myself.
Oh my gosh.
I'm very kind now.
Yes.
I'm very kind now.
Yes. Oh my God. That's such a powerful statement right there. Being kind to yourself. That's something that we have to learn how to do, right?
Yeah.
As women.
And allowing yourself the space to fail. It's okay to fail, because there's no way you can learn how to succeed if you don't know how to fail successfully.
100%. I agree. Anyone out there who is grappling with trauma, identity crisis, or feeling of hopelessness, what would you say to them about what you've learned so far in your own experience with some of this stuff?
Find those people in your life who can be your champions, who can love you, and teach them how to love you. Because my best friend and I had a very rough friendship growing up, but over the last 5-6 years, we've gotten so close because we are so forgiving of each other's faults, and we don't expect the other person to change anymore.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think that's such a gift. So I'd say when you're healing, it's okay. Reach out to people because you can't do this alone. You just can't. We're not
I
here.
agree.
We are people, which is why this year was so hard for people. We are people of like, we are social beings, and we need to, so find someone to connect with, because I don't think you can do this alone.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, that, and if you can afford therapy, my God, please, it's the best gift you can give yourself.
Absolutely.
Therapy, going to therapy for 2 years shifted everything for me.
I think that therapy
like,
is something that everybody should have.
You're paying them to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone needs therapy.
You're paying them, for one, you're paying them to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're paying them to listen to for an hour. So you might as well take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
Like your friends don't need to listen to you for an hour at a time at all times. Like, it gets exhausting. So find someone, pay them to do it. And now most health insurance covers it, which is a wonderful thing that Obamacare did. So
yeah, absolutely. And I want to, because we're getting close to having to close off. Damn it. But we are.
I know.
So much more I want to talk to you about, but I want to bring it back to a couple of things that I feel are important. One is for those people who are still doing art as a hobby, but are trying to figure out how to do it as a business. What are maybe some tips you could give to them from your experience?
Sure. So the way I started, I went independent as a consultant doing digital marketing for clients. And so that allowed me to not get pressured in selling work, because that was a decision I had made early on. I was not going to sell my work for cheap. It's this perception that the higher the price of your art, the higher valued you are, right?
Right.
And so for me, it was necessary. I was willing to wait for my art to be valued over time. And so I kept doing consulting, and I would paint for maybe 20 minutes a day. So I would say, if you can do 20 minutes, give your passion 20 minutes, that 20 minutes will turn into full time at some point.
Wow.
Just do it and be very disciplined about it. I painted my first project for 100 days. So just like, and it changed my life, because all I could think about was like, oh my God, I'm going to paint this today. Like, it's just your mind. Like, it's this, that's what I'm talking about. The cognitive ecstasy that comes from that discipline. So I would say add it part of your calendar, like schedule it in if you need to, but do it. And if you need to find a corner in your house to do it, do that. That's what my studio was literally the corner of my living room. Yeah. And now it's a whole bottom floor. So you just never know. Absolutely. So that's like the greatest piece of advice.
So in I at the beginning of the conversation, but I didn't want to go there at that time. I wanted to kind of save it to the end so people kind of have this top of mind. You're talking about a new show that you are working on. Let's talk a little. Let's tap into that. What is it? Where will it be? And how can people participate?
So right now, I'm just literally, the first season per se is a test run. It's called the Heartwork Talk, and it's capital ART. Rest of it is lowercase. Okay. And it's really, it talks about the heart behind the art. And art is very subjective to what you're doing. So it could be your professional life. There's art in there, right? Like art is not necessarily just painting. Right. And so I wanted to tell stories of creators from the deeper heart behind their art, because I don't think like the questions you asked today, they're beautiful, right? Like, we don't talk about like what really truly drives an artist to create work. It's not just a technique. It's really, there's so much more to a person's process. And that Heartwork Talk is about that to give people a stage to share their journeys. And so far the feedback has been amazing. So next year, first season officially, will be a little bit different. The idea is to have an in-person audience of 25, intimate audience. Okay. Do a video recording and an audio, and I will launch it as a podcast and YouTube channel.
Oh, I love it. So how can people find out about this when you're ready? Like, do you have like an email list that they can join, or like how can they get involved?
Just follow my Instagram. I'm really good about sharing what's upcoming on my Instagram, and Facebook, not so much as of now. But once I have the Heartwork Talk, like actually record it, I'll share a lot,
Oh, brilliant.
Hopefully a lot more in advance.
So the goal then here, folks, is to make sure that you join Jenny's Instagram at Jenny Vyas, JENNY VYAS. Mark that down. Go check out her work because she's brilliant. Any final words that you want to share with people out there? Anything at all?
I just feel like there is a calling. When you are meant to do something, there's this calling. It's this gut feeling. If you haven't read The Alchemist, I highly recommend you guys read it because it's such a beautiful book. I read it every 5 years and I cry every single time. It's this story. There's this story that the universe is trying to unfold through you, and the signs show up in your life in different parts of your life, and it's your job to find it. So that calling is there. You just haven't listened to it. So that's that gut feeling. That's the feeling inside. And if you listen to that, could be anything. Could be writing. Could be reading. Could be knitting. Could be, I don't know, making bicycles. Like whatever you feel like. There's this, pay attention to that because it'll change your life.
It will change your life. You heard the last magic words right there from the fabulous Jenny Vyas. I absolutely adore you, woman. I cannot wait for all the other magic that's going to come from within you. And you know, at the end of the day, what you do is you provide a service to those of us who are willing and patient enough to see what it is that you're putting out there in the world. And I am willing, I am patient, and that's what I encourage people to be as well. Please go check out the fabulous Jenny Vyas on her Instagram page. And thank you so much, sweetheart. You are just, I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you. Thank you. This was wonderful. This was wonderful.